Alright, the next thing I'm going to do here is assemble the timing gearing and the timing case for preparation to install in the engine. So what I've got here is the timing case, my two timing gears, cam followers, and the rubber O-rings that go on the top there. So Enya engines are interesting in their timing. They're a little bit more difficult than a Sato, say, or even an OS. Those are really simple engines to time. The 46, 60, 80, and 90 all have slightly different means to time it. They're similar, but they're slightly different. Now, I had a heart attack because, believe it or not, this is the first time I've actually disassembled an Enya 90 and reassembled one. But I had a heart attack because in every other Enya engine I've done, the 46, 60, 80, the exhaust and inlet timing gears were different, and that they were sort of staggered, and they were different. Basically, they were just different. When I pulled this apart and I saw that these two were identical, I was like, holy crap, something's not right here. Well, I did a little research and contacted a distributor for Enya parts and found out that on the 90 and probably the 120s also, these two timing gears are exactly the same. They've got timing marks on either side. So, with that said, doesn't matter. They're both the same. Now what you have to do is, on this shaft here, there are two marks on this shaft. And I know you're probably not going to be able to see them, but suffice to say there are two marks. The lobes, and I'm going to put a picture up on the video too that shows the orientation of the lobes. The lobes go in a certain position for whatever type of engine. I think the 90, the lobes point up. But the thing is, the timing dot, which is very, very small and very difficult to see if you don't have these things perfectly cleaned, goes in here in such a way that, let me just drop this in here real quick, in such a way that that the center line, or actually the mark on this shaft, will line up with that line, with that timing mark. So what I'm going to end up having to do here is put these gears on here to time it, and then reassemble the housing on top of that. So I just recalled that that's what I need to do. So with that said, I can go ahead and drop my cam followers in, since these are going in last. Now the cam followers look like little metal cylinders, but they've got a dimple in there, and that's where the push rod engages. So you want to make sure that that dimple is up. You don't want to push these down too far because you don't want them interfering with when I go to put this on there. So I'm just going to drop these two. So that's ready. Now what I have to do is find top dead center of this thing, which is right here, and then I'll lower my magnifier, and I can see where these two alignment marks are. What I have to do is put this in such a way that that timing, that dot, lines up exactly with this thing. I think I'm a tooth off here. There we go. Now this one will actually go the opposite direction, so you can't actually see the lobe. That's another thing that had me thrown, was that the 46, 53, 60, 80, the lobes are both facing out. That's why they have that offset shaft there, so that the gearing doesn't, touch each other. But this engine is different. So here I've got my timing mark here, and I'm just going to set that in here. And that's in there now. Let's see here. It looks like they're timed now. It looks like I'm a tooth off here. Okay, there we go. Now that engine is timed. Now the kicker is I just have to get this cover on. So when I was removing this timing case, one of the biggest areas where there's a mechanical fit, where there's friction, and it's hard to pull that off, is not only these gears that are engaged in these brass cups, but it's this timing shaft that goes into that bearing. and that can be really tight. And I just trial fit this on there, and I had a hard time pulling it right off again because it pretty much snaps into place. Now, one of the things I just noticed, I thought I ordered all the gaskets I needed, which now this kind of just pisses me off a little bit. But apparently I didn't actually order the gasket that goes on here. So what I'm going to do is, since this is my own personal engine and I'm not selling this, I'm just going to assemble this without a gasket. And if it turns out that it leaks, I'll just pull this thing off, order a gasket, and put one back on. So pistons at top dead center. It looks like we're timed properly. All I have to do now is this in place. It's going to take a little, there, snapped into place. Now, just install my 4 screws. Now this engine is timed. Here, ready to install the head. If you recall from one of the previous videos, part 2 I think it was, I had all the parts cleaned up. I did drop the valves in this. They didn't really need it, but I did. Cleaned up the carbon that was on the exhaust valve stem. And so this thing's pretty much ready to go here. I've got my rubber O-rings in here. Actually, I never took them out. So, the push rods. These push rods for Enya engines are fully symmetrical. You can mix and match them, doesn't matter. They're the same on both ends, they're just rounded. Unlike Sato ones, which have a taper, these are just perfectly symmetrical, so it doesn't matter if you actually get those mixed up. So what we've got to do here is we've got to try to stand these things up here and fit our head in place. Now what I'm going to do is just kind of start dropping some screws in here. And just make sure I can start running them in. So. Now before I run them down too tight, I want to make sure, I just want to get them all engaged. And I just want to take a quick look here, make sure that I'm fully engaged here. I don't have any pinching on my O-rings, and it looks good right now. So far it's going down nice and straight. So in a diagonal pattern, I'll run these down until they hit. I'm not putting any torque on them at all. Now I pay special attention to this one because this is a screw that typically doesn't get, I find on many engines, isn't torqued properly. So that one just kind of started the torque there, a little bit there, a little bit there, a little bit here. So now they're all initially torqued. Now I'm going to finish torquing. Okay, head bolts are torqued. It's on there. So now, next thing I can do is drop my push rods in place. And I just felt them push down. Yep, I can feel them moving up and down with the cam followers, so the cam followers aren't stuck. They're both down in the lowest most position right now. I can bring my rocker arm assembly out. And I really didn't disturb it much. This rocker arm assembly has, one end is completely cut off, the other end has a cutout in it. Doesn't really matter which way it goes in there, but I did run these screws down, so I need to bring them back up so that they will accept this. Now I don't know which one of these is which anymore, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to be setting the timing anyway, so I'm going to just one rocker arm in place, make sure I put that, get that piston or the cup on the on the push rod there. Okay, maybe I don't have that. Is that screw high enough? Okay, there we go. Make sure I don't put this on upside down here. We got our cup there. On top of that. And slide it in. Okay, now we can get our spring going. I gotta push it in so that I've got enough room to get my other push rod or my rocker arm in. Believe me, this isn't as hard as I'm making it look. Made sure my shaft, my cutouts are facing upwards. So they're in place. Push rods are engaged in the cup like they're supposed to be. I just run these down. Now, I'm not putting a lot of torque on this because you don't really need to. The exhaust cover or the valve cover is going to keep that from coming out. So I could put the valve cover back on now, but since I have to time the engine, we're not going to do that. But I do want to make sure looks like my rockers are moving properly. So we're good to go there. Let's see what's next here. Guess I can go ahead and slide this on. Here's the finished product. All reassembled. Now I did go ahead and just put the valve cover on just for visual effect. I don't actually have this timed yet. I've got other videos online that explain how to time engines, so I didn't feel it necessary to show that. But I did want to show the result of this, how nice this engine looks. What I did here on the carb was I took the original throttle arm off and just replaced it with a long servo arm that I cut down to size, because I've just found that these short little throttle arms they put on these things, kind of because of the size of the carb, can get in the way of the push rods and stuff there. So that's really the only change I've made to this engine. I've got an Enya number 3 plug in here. My prop nut had a little bit of a burr on it, so I've got that cleaned off. Once I set the timing, this engine's ready for its first run. So stay tuned for that, and I hope you enjoyed this video.